Hello, welcome back to Coffee Over Apples. My name is Steph, and this is a horror reading vlog. A popular name floating around the horror booktube community, I think for at least the past year, if not more, is Eric Larocca, who is a horror writer, and I believe they write mostly novellas, or if not mostly novellas, then just books that are not as long as what I'm used to reading, and I need that in my life. So since a wonderful friend of mine, Vicky, asked me to do a buddy read with them, I thought, why not do an Eric Larocca taste test video as my next vlog? So I think I'm going to read two books in this vlog. I think I'm going to read one that is a little bit less popular based on their ratings and one that is a little bit more popular just to see how they flow with me. I wish I'd done this for a few more authors that I may have rated their first book a lower rating than I would have liked to because I was highly anticipating that I was going to vibe with their work. But alas, first book in this vlog is going to be You've Lost a Lot of Blood. I'm going in completely blind. I have no idea. The only reason that I'm picking this up first and that I know anything about it is because it is the first book that is available on Scribd. So here goes nothing. Hey, update for the horror reading vlog. So I have started reading You've Lost a Lot of Blood by Eric Larocca, and it's interesting. I feel like it's currently sitting at a 3-star. So this is my first Eric Larocca book that I've ever read. And what's interesting about this is that it's written in a way that it's conversations from a serial killer. And because I'm listening to it on audio, it's like there were parts in the beginning that made the book seem like it is based on actual events, but I'm buddy reading this with a friend of mine who, when I asked her these questions like, hey, is this actually based off something? She was able to confirm, no, it's actually not based off something. It's kind of like insinuated in the way that it's formatted in the physical version that this is like implied to be actual events. For the sake of the book, because it talks in the beginning about the author or the editor wanting to publish this regardless of any pushback that they're getting from families of the murder's victims, and saying that it's important because it'll help us get inside the mind of the serial killer. So this entire book, while it contains short stories that are unrelated to the serial killer dialogue, it's about being inside the serial killer's mind. So that's super interesting. So what happens is we kind of flip back and forth in different chapters between reading a short story that the serial killer wrote and diary entries. And he is a killer that preys more specifically on gay men because it's men that he wants to have sex with. Or if he doesn't have sex with them, he is sexually attracted to them in some way. He chooses them based on their beauty, and the ways that he wants to kill them are related to his feelings for them. So for example, there's this one person who he is fetishizing, and he doesn't want to drown them because of what happens to the body afterward. He says that this man is so beautiful that he doesn't want to disfigure his body. He wants to kill him in a way that preserves his beauty. So that's very interesting because the short stories that he's writing are very much gory and they seem like they're written for shock value. So it's like the way that this person conducts themselves is they get a constant hit of dopamine on things that they know are shocking on that gore, right? But there's another person, not sure yet if this person is another serial killer, which I think it may have been implied that there were 2 serial killers by the end of this book, and that I don't know if they're working together or what the case is, but that that these two people at one point are having a conversation on what does it mean for something to be truly horrorful. So the other person is saying that leaving space for the imagination is what gives a chance for something to be truly horrorful, because it's allowing someone to insert their personal definition and preferences, and filling that void with the unknown is more horrible than something that is of shock value. And the main character, the main POV, thinks that just saying things up front and seeing them as they are, that something is most horrible when it's directly in front of you. So, and that's how he writes, which is interesting. So it's like, when we're in his mind, we're in his conversations, we're in this dialogue, it's really charged, it's really heavy, it's really wild to see the things that he dreams about. But what I like about it is that it's not just gore, it's not just grotesque for the sake of being grotesque, because we have these other conversations that are happening where he gets to justify his reasoning without necessarily coming out yet and saying, hey, I'm a serial killer, like this is just what I think is horrible, but this is what he does in his personal time. But he writes that way. But what he's writing, the story itself, like I said, is not interesting, because it's about a girl who sees monsters, but she's also an illustrator. So I don't know if she just has an overactive imagination that she sees these things. But she's traveling with a little boy. I'm not sure if it's her little brother. I think it might be her little brother. And she's going to this kind of haunted house-esque situation where there's a man who's very wealthy, and he's a game developer, and he's hired her to do some work for the game that he's developing called You've Lost a Lot of Blood. So she's like seeing things, and strange things are happening, and it's very haunting. But the way that the story is written is like, we'll see a monster, a glimpse of something, and then it'll immediately, the story will keep going, the plot itself will keep going. She's just seeing these horrible things along the way that are just like, again, shock value, but then we move past them. We don't delve deeper into the why of how they're there yet. We don't have any consequences of seeing them. It's just like, this shocking thing happened, keep going. And that's very much how the main character seems to be living their life. So that's really interesting. Yeah. But again, it's sitting at a 3, because half the book is this dialogue, which I love, and half the book is this short story, which I don't love, which also says something about my preferences as a horror reader. Like, I want that buildup. I want the narrative as to what is the reasoning as to why these horrible things are happening. Just doing horrible things just for the sake of horrible things still has to have a specific purpose. Like, what is it that we are trying to highlight as to why the world is just so screwed up sometimes? Because none of that happens without any kind of prerequisite. So I think it's good. It's just not great. But if I sit on this after talking about this for a little bit longer, maybe I'll turn up my rating. Who knows? But I'm halfway done. It's a short audiobook. It's only 4 hours. I'm driving around today, so maybe I will finish it today. And then I'll let you know. Okay, bye.
My face is smooth like a baby's bum.
Hi, I'm in the sauna, one of the lower temperature saunas at my favorite spa, and this is quickly becoming a spa vlog, so I think I'm going to fill this vlog with spa footage for aesthetic reasons. But I did finish You've Lost a Lot of Blood by Eric Larocca, and I have so many thoughts about this. Even though I ultimately ended up rating it a 3-star, it felt middle of the road, but I think this book very much accomplished what it set out to do, and I think that this book might actually deserve a dedicated review video. That'll also be separate from this, but my thoughts about it are that I think that this was written as an intent to be a critique of connoisseurship. I think I got a lot out of this book because it's about artistry. It's about a connoisseur of media, a connoisseur of media and of classic arts. So the killer, our main killer, who ultimately ends up being a lover of their another serial killer, and where the deeper conversations of this go, have these conversations about, like, does the main killer get to consider themselves an artist if they're recreating things that are inspired by their favorite Renaissance paintings, and these are the kinds of crime scenes that they're leaving for the police. So it's very much reminiscent of, like, Jeffrey Dahmer meets Hannibal Lecter kind of thing. And the argument there being that this person may not have ever had an original thought, and that they are so lost within themselves that they take from media that they consider to be great in order to recreate something that they find beautiful and kind of fits within the mold of their fetishization of the gay body. And it's like, it hits really hard, but what I think really drags this book down is the story that's in between, and I don't think it necessarily needed the story, the short stories that the main character wrote, to kind of illustrate how they write that in a way that creates media that is solely based on their sense of beauty and their aesthetic. So for that reason, I can see why a lot of people didn't like this book, but from an artist perspective, I really did enjoy it. There was another character specifically in this book that was created solely, oh gosh, I'm sweating, solely for challenging the main character's narrative, and that delved into some deeper places where I wasn't expecting this book to go. So I think if you're an artist, you're really gonna like this book. I just made a wonderful discovery that I can use the same tripod that I use for my camera when I play online Magic with the friends and the crew for my phone. This is wonderful. I'm gonna have so many better angles now, so much better control over lighting. Best investment ever. So I am so conflicted. First of all, I'm sitting here eating Gushers, and I just got out of work, and I am getting ready to host some reading sprints for the Magic the Gathering readathon. And I finished They Were Here Before Us. I don't know how to feel. Okay? Up until the last 30 minutes of this book, which I think is a lot, considering that this is a novella and that it is an hour and a half audiobook. I think 2 hours most, but because of the speed that I've read it on, it's an hour and a half audiobook. And at first I was bored. Even though it's like one of those things where it's like intriguing enough that I don't want to DNF it, but it wasn't captivating me. The ending, however, the ending did so much for me. I don't know if this taste test was successful. I feel like this is a challenge for me to be able to make a cohesive thought to tell you if this Eric Larocca taste test was successful. I am on the cusp of picking up another book to add to this vlog. There were some similarities to They Were Here Before Us and the first book I read in this vlog. What was that book again? Oh, You've Lost a Lot of Blood. Also, there was a name drop for You've Lost a Lot of Blood. Both of these books were about love, and a very questionable love. But I really wonder if anybody who is able to kill for anything that's not sport, but do it regularly for any kind of enjoyable reason, doesn't have some sort of fetishization involved with it. I don't know. But it was about love in different contexts. So what was interesting about this set of stories was that it was a series of various POVs starting from smaller organisms and working their way up to people. Some of these stories were a little bit more supernatural than others, and the supernatural ones were the ones that gripped me the most. That were like, if I could have an entire separate short story collection that had that vibe, this would have potentially been a 5-star read, or at least a 4-star. But their ones that were less supernatural were more about the body horror in relation to love and lust, but from an animal's perspective. So to clarify, the first story was following a bug. We don't exactly get to know what kind of bug it is, but rather something that thrives in decay. So it was this creature that was kind of personified as like the millennial issue of, you know, there not being enough space and having to like live with your parents till you're 30, and like having a crisis about like, where am I supposed to be at this point in life, but from a bug's perspective that's eating off of a carcass. So that was interesting. There's like some semi-social commentary in there, but again, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just projecting, I don't really know, but it was like the bug was in love with the body that it was feasting off of. Major trigger warnings, by the way, because even in that first story and in other stories, a lot of harm to animals, being that this is a horror and we get a lot of animal POVs, but also there are POVs from mothers, harm to women, and harm to children, which are also my triggers. And there was a lot of children in this in various forms. Children, or, you know, small animals, like baby animals, baby birds, baby everything, honestly. So I found that story particularly interesting, about this like fetishization of your partner and this bug that personified the body, and that body that it was living off of became its lover, and it devoured it to make it only itself. So that was wildly interesting, but not enough for me to rate it high. I was still sitting with that as a 3. Like, oh, it's an enjoyable story, and it's a very different POV, but I'm not in love with it, right? The next story after that had to do with a monkey. There was some bestiality that was hinted at. I'm not going to go too much in there because I think it's going to be a spoiler. There was a bird POV and a supernatural scarecrow, which is the one that's on the cover of the audiobook I read. So I was like, okay, we're getting to the core of something here. But again, that brought in some supernatural elements, and then it just ended. And I'm like, whoa, I want more of that, right? My least favorite, honestly, sadly enough, I think there was a story about a lesbian couple that started off, I think, very strong, but I kind of got confused along the way as to why the horrible things happened. Like, what was the motivation, I think? I think it was in a way related to the first few stories of like, we belong together, but I don't want anyone else to have you, so I will do whatever it takes to be the one who rids you of this earth so I can claim you as my own kind of spiel. But that one didn't sit so well with me because I was like, again, I could totally be misunderstanding this, but I think by that point I'm like, okay, we've gotten this kind of storyline a couple times over in the different narratives that we've been given in the other short stories, so I'm kind of like, give me something else. And that's where the last story came in. And the last story I loved the most. And it was heart-wrenching that we just got enough background context on the characters to really feel for them, and then bad shit happens to them, right? So this father, who's a gay man, his partner is in the hospital. His partner is terminally ill, and they have a son. And they talk a little bit, there's some commentary between them and another character about, like, wanting a child. I think, again, it goes back to, like, the millennial crisis in a way. So maybe I'm not projecting, because this is another thing that kind of led me to that, was, you know, wanting a child, but, like, can you afford it? Or is this something that you want for your life? And kind of living in a time where you have that choice, but what do you do when your partner wants one and you don't? Like, how do you kind of reconcile with that, as someone who's like, you want to make sure that the love of your life is happy? So there's commentary on parenthood in there, which I thought was very interesting, but it's the most supernatural in that it's a monster story. And again, I don't think I could tell you much more about it other than it's between the father and the child, and it takes place on a highway. I will say, as like a hint of what kind of monster story it was, I got The Mist. It was very much giving me Stephen King's The Mist, so if you've read that, you will probably enjoy the short story. So I rated that the highest because I was very much invested in the character's background. I was at the edge of my seat when things were going down, and I was like, who's gonna die? I honestly don't know who's going to survive this, and if they do survive this, how are they going to survive this? Could I survive this? Probably not. I would have just been like, take me now, monster. Yeah, so I thought it was a good time. So because of that, it's like, all right, I think ultimately I enjoyed both of these books for different reasons, but I'm still rating them both a 3. And with how kind of gripped I was with 2 of the short stories and how ungripped I was with the rest of them, it's like, am I an Eric Larocca girly or am I not? I don't understand how I feel. Scribd has something, everything the darkness eats, or something like that. It has it, and I've been debating reading it just as like the 3rd try. But we'll see. Either I will wrap up this video and that'll be it. But you'll kind of know the answer already before me, who's recording this right now, because this video will either be extremely long, adding a 3rd book to this, or it ends abruptly after this, so. Okay, bye. Hello. So ultimately I decided no. Update on my nails, by the way. It's Hispanic Heritage Month, so I got the Puerto Rican flag done on my nails. Because, you know, gotta represent. No, I think, I don't want to say that I am decidedly not an Eric Larocca girly, that I'm like not a fan of his. I think there is potential for some of his other books to hit the way that I wanted them to, but I don't think that I'm like a new favorite, he's a new favorite for me. I don't think that I enjoyed these enough in order for me to do a 3rd book for this vlog. So let me talk about, I guess, some positive things and why I think that he it's not that I dislike his writing. I think he's a great writer, but I think there's different kinds of horror, right? I mean, there's like cosmic horror and psychological horror, and there's splatterpunk and extreme horror and all those things. And those things are fine. That's not what I'm referring to. It's not him as a horror writer in a specific genre. I think it's more so that just that first book alone, which I know he tried to break up by inserting the other novella, which gave us that splatterpunk element, it would have been much higher of a rating for me. I would have enjoyed it so much more because I would have understood that this is our purpose. And so I'm going into this with more of a philosophical analysis mindset. But to switch between that and the gore, it didn't work for me. So that being said, I think going forward, I will look for in the future, when I pick up his other books eventually, that there may be a mix of those two things. But I don't know if I'm the kind of horror reader where I want to flip-flop between that. When a horror book establishes itself as something that is action-based or strong character development, or almost like I said, like an analysis of the genre, I kind of just want to sit in that for a while. I feel like that in itself is a lot. That's a really lofty goal. And I don't know that I needed more from him to kind of counteract that with entertainment. If we're not here for an entertainment purposes, if I didn't come here and I didn't get splatterpunk and gore and action in the very beginning, I'm not really going to expect that throughout the rest of it. So, I don't know. Again, I think this is more reflective of my taste. I clearly see why so many other people love his books, and I did enjoy my time reading this, and I would pick him up again, just not right now. You know, I'm finding that more of the horror books that I'm enjoying right now choose one thing to digest, and that's it. Like, it is, for example, a monster horror through and through, or it is a psychological horror through and through, a haunted house situation through and through, and it was just too heady for me, and that's okay. That's okay. I still recommend it. I recommend these books. I think that if you've never read Eric Larocca before, that the first book would not be my first suggestion. You've Lost a Lot of Blood would not be my first suggestion where to start. Maybe more so the second book. I do recommend them if you're interested in horror. I don't think that they were bad books at all. They were just kind of like middle of the road for me. If you are an Eric Larocca fan and you have another book of his that, now that you know my thoughts, you think that I would enjoy, please drop it into the comments, because I am very interested to know, like, based on what I've said, which of his other books you think I should prioritize picking up. Because like I said, I do plan on picking him up in the future, just not right now, because I've got other horror books that are kind of higher on my priority list. So, but I'm off to record another video. I'll post videos whenever I feel like it. See you later. Bye.